I'm sure there's like more detailed explanations on the state of ArtTok right now, done by much more well-spoken people. This is just kind of like a little rant that has some of my own experiences and experiences I've witnessed. So yeah, I've been on ArtTok, whatever, for like a while now, and it's been an interesting experience. I guess I can say that much. But there's a lot of problems, I think, within the community, how it's built. Some of that is to blame from the algorithm and whatnot. But I think recently there's been a lot of like crazy stuff that's been happening. So yeah, we'll get into those. The first one that I see a lot of, and I think I mentioned this in the other video, the one I posted a couple days ago, was beginner artist pushback and criticism. By that I mean, a lot of people tend to target younger and less experienced artists and kind of flood them with hate comments. And sometimes it's not like outright hate. Sometimes it'll go like, oh, this is so pretty, but the proportions are off. And if you're an overthinker, like me, that tends to mess with you a little bit. I personally haven't had much of an experience because I wasn't a beginner artist on TikTok, or at least I didn't have a lot of followers in 2019 when I was first posting on TikTok on a different account. But a lot of artists that are beginners tend to have a lot of issues posting their work. I have a lot of beginner artist mutuals or younger artists that are in my following, and I have to watch them get like ripped apart by comments. Like, I want to say a couple months ago to a year ago, there was an artist who hadn't drawn for like 5 years, and then they like got back into art, or it was like there was a short trend that was going around for a little bit where it's like, show your art from maybe like 2019 to now, and their art hadn't changed much, and there were slight improvements, but oh my gosh, the comments were just terrible. And I was fighting for my life in that comment section, trying to defend the original poster. But it's sad that this isn't an isolated experience, because I have to watch a bunch of other beginner artists or people who are emerging in the art community kind of get a truckload of really mean people to deal with. Especially if like your art style isn't especially like pleasing to the eye. If you have a really stylized art style, people tend to jump on it a lot more, which kind of brings me into the next part, which is, the whole rendering process thing, the pushback. I think the rendering process thing was like the most notorious. But when somebody has proportions, I guess, or like a slightly strange like elements in their art, and most of the times it's intentional, right? People tend to be a lot more mean towards it. I can't think of a better word. And this is something that like I've had to deal with recently. Well, not too recent. So I want to say 4 years ago, I made like an animation meme, and I decided a couple months ago to remake that. And it wasn't the best quality. I can at least admit that, because it was something. But I at least thought it was better than the original. and obviously there was a lot of changes in the art style, in the character's design, all that stuff. So when I posted it, I wasn't expecting much reception, but that one blew up to a degree. And when I noticed that there was a lot more views than there were likes, I immediately knew I knew something was up, because when there's a large gap like that, it's not ending well. Long story short, I was getting comment after comment about things like the chin, the eye distance, every other thing. It was just too much at some point, and I just kind of got tired of deleting comments, and I buried it for a little bit, set it to followers only, because I was just so done with the amount of comments I was getting. And a lot of these people are not artists, which is another thing I could tangent on, but I think I would be getting off point. Long story short, if your art is stylized to a degree or has features that are not considered average in an art style, or conventionally attractive in some ways, it gets a lot of feedback, and not good feedback, obviously, if that wasn't apparent enough. And I'm not sure how to explain this next point as well eloquently as I can, but there's also, I want to say, pretty recent, it's not as recent, but kind of always been a micro trend, to talk about art regression, specifically puppy chan, and that's a whole can of worms that I am not qualified enough to speak on. But there's this whole obsession with art regression. There was this artist who posted, the old art, new art, trend thing. And because their art style was different, and by different I mean more stylized, they got demolished, basically, by comments saying the old one was better, that they regressed in their art. And this is a common occurrence, I guess, because I feel every other time I'm hearing about an artist getting pushed off of the platform because of people just being terrible. So I guess that there's just a lot of obsession with saying, oh, you had a puppy chan art regression, or your art regressed, and all that sort of thing. And it's just sad that instead of getting, positive attention, that most ArtTok attention is negative. So people who do have excellent art just don't get any reception. It sucks because, people posting their art, because I have a lot of really, really talented mutuals, and they don't get enough views and traction that they deserve because their art is so good. And it's sad because the way that I generate views and content on the TikTok platform is by making silly, stupid little animations, and I like animating, it's fun, but it always has to do with a trend for it to do anything, and even then it's not guaranteed to do well. And the only reason that I'm trying to post that stuff is because I want people to follow me so they can see my actual art. And it's kind of frustrating having something that you're not as passionate about be the only way to generate views and content. Because one of the things on ArtTok is it's kind of the same thing over and over and over again. Especially when there's a little micro trend going around, where they kind of just draw a couple things and then they'll move the camera to the beat, the music, whatever. And that form of content is fun. It's funny when it is, but unfortunately that's like the only way that people can generate enough views. And that's not at the fault of artists, obviously. It's more of the algorithm thing. It's just that, it's there's a lot of things that I think are pretty depressing about the ArtTok community. And this last one I'm also not very qualified to speak on. But there's this general thing where people tend to give an audience to some not great people. And I think the most recent one is, Pumpkin Gentleman. I really didn't know much about that situation. I, again, am not qualified to speak on all that. But instead of, talking about the things that probably should be talked about when it comes to somebody being problematic, the first thing that people go for is the art. Because if the art isn't, like, good, then they'll immediately go for that instead of talking about the things that actually matter. And yeah, I can agree that there was a couple strange things that were going on with Pumpkin Gentleman's art, but it's not like anything I think that was like crazy. It's just that people kind of focus on the wrong thing, I guess. But that isn't to say that ArtTok is all like terrible and that people are just so terribly mean to each other, which they are, but it isn't just terrible stuff. I guess I'm trying to say, take a shot every time I say terrible. Because I've really liked my time with ArtTok, I guess, because when you do find good mutuals on there, they're really supportive and they're great, and usually when you do get comments that like kind of mess with you, people do come to defend you sometimes if you have built that type of positive community. I have a lot of mutuals. Some of them I don't talk to enough, but I'll see their content, I'll like their content. I'll show my support when I can. And I don't know, if you're treading the right way, I guess, you can find some really great people on ArtTok, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And though there are some people who give unsolicited art advice, and that's always a bummer, I guess, there are still times that like I've asked for genuine art advice from people, and they've set me on a track that I can genuinely improve on. And because of the community, I think it's pushed me to improve more. In some ways, I think just seeing other people's art and seeing them try to grow a platform kind of like motivates me too. In a good way. That's just to say that art TikTok isn't all that horrible, guys. I guess in general, there are a lot of problems on art TikTok, as problems are, I guess, always gonna be on that platform. I feel like I'm gonna see a lot more beginner artists get harassed off the platform, a lot more artists constantly being told that they regressed in their artwork. But I don't know. It's just it's been a lot of stuff, I guess. That doesn't really make sense. But yeah. Art TikTok, it's a place, all right. Yeah. Special thanks again to everyone who's commented on the last video, shown their support. I wasn't originally sure how well these were going to fare on YouTube, because I've used YouTube in the past, I think for like 4 years, and usually they don't do that well when I'm like starting a new channel. But I don't know, I wasn't expecting as much people to view that video. Yeah, thank you for all of the positive feedback. It's great. And if you do have anything else to speak about, or you want me to talk about, I'd love to hear it in the comments. I would also love to hear about your experience with ArtTok, if you've had similar experiences on the platform, all that stuff. Yeah,